Evening workshop, folks. Tonight we've got another good one here. I am looking forward to this. Nate and I have been chatting for a little while. I've got Nate from Two Chicks Homestead. How are you, Nate?
I'm doing all right. How about you, Tim?
Not bad at all. And unfortunately, we're not recording this episode over ham radio, but we are going to talk about ham radio. So,
as Chris says, get your livers ready. We might need it.
Yeah. So for everybody out there, Nate and I are two members of the Fireside Freedom kind of collab podcast. And we have this ongoing thing because Nate is very passionate about ham radio that we always wait to see how far into the episode we can get before Nate uses that 3-letter word. And when he finally does, we all have to take a drink of whatever drink we're drinking. So,
yep. Well, we didn't even make it a minute this time. So,
no, that is, well, it's in the damn title. So, what are we going to do? So, what are you drinking tonight, Nate? The all important question.
I got twisted teas because I got to take it light because we're going to be talking a lot about this and I got to work tomorrow.
Absolutely. That's okay. I ran out of ice tonight, but I still have my old fashioned tonight. It's made with Larceny bourbon. And yeah, it should be a good evening. So
there you go.
So what have you been up to lately, Nate?
It was my birthday yesterday. Then
I put on Facebook that you were 49, I think. Is that right?
You're a few years off.
Yeah. I just want to be younger than you. That's all. So.
Let's see. Then kind of hung out with the girls yesterday, drove around, looked at some Christmas lights. And then our neighbor dropped off 5 geese for us.
They were hunting or whatever?
Yep. Yeah, they went goose hunting yesterday, and then we processed that all this morning. So we put, let's see, 5 breasted out. It was like 7.9 pounds, give or take.
Nice.
So almost 8 pounds.
So I'm not sure if Renegade is that legitimate what he put up there? Or is
yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Go ahead. That's his call sign. Came to kill.
Nice.
So
Haas says not getting any. No, I can hear you. Everybody, I'm sure. Yeah, just make sure out there can.
Yeah, test.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure everybody. I think.
Because I hear you.
Yeah,
you hear me. I think
coming through. Okay, folks. So, especially for the people who are going to be listening on the audio version of this, Nate. I'm sure there'll be a few that haven't necessarily heard of you before or where you're from. So, tell me a little bit about. Because we always joke about your name, Two Chicks Homestead, and tell us who you are, what you guys do, and that kind of thing.
Yep. So I'm half of the Two Chicks Homestead. I'm the bearded half. The bearded lady. We got to have those running around as well. My wife and I do a podcast once a week, and we just kind of talk about running stuff on our half-acre land. We do everything from rabbits to hogs. Well, we process hog every year. I do a lot of hunting. And just kind of general messing around. We live in a small town, 2,100 people, and been a ham radio operator for about a year and a half, a little over that, almost 2 years. Be 2 years in March.
So, just for the record, since Nate kind of undersells the fact that he's only been a ham guy for a couple of years, but I haven't met anyone who's, all kidding aside, more passionate or more knowledgeable about the subject. So we'll have fun. At some point, someday, maybe I'll put together my own version of the expert council. And there's no doubt in my mind what Nate will answer the questions on. So
yeah, there you go. I'm pretty good at it. I know what I'm talking about. It's going to be a little fun with this one, going through the history, because I actually learned a lot of stuff researching this.
And I don't know, there's something fun about history. I'm not even sure why I love history so much. It's just, we take so much of the everyday kind of boring, monotonous stuff for granted. We don't realize all the things that had to happen before for us to get to where we are, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we grew up as city kids, and to even come out here and then just start messing with animals and messing with ham radio. It's yeah.
That's true. It's a lot of things that you don't necessarily think about. And, Becky and I went down the homesteading path for a long time. And so my personal story of ham radio is a very short one, but I do have my basic up in Canada, which is, 2 meter. What is that again? 2 meter? Is that
UHF?
UHF. Yeah. So
I know that's VHF, and then UHF is 440.
Yes. So I do plan at some point to eventually become, advanced so that I can do HF contacts, and Nate and I can, skip back and forth over the ionosphere. Let me see if I can make that sound right. Yep.
Yep.
And chat a few times. So, but yeah, it's coming. I got my call sign, oh man, about 8 years ago. And the guy, I'm going to guess, I hate to say this, but I think the guy who did my testing, I can't imagine he was in his late 90s when he tested me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, anyway, haven't chatted with him in a long time. But the problem is in my area, we don't have any ham within, say, an hour's drive,
Yeah.
And the group that does exist is up in Lloydminster, and, their average age would be probably in the 80s, which is not a big deal. It's just, hard to interact and find time to get up there for their ham breakfasts, which are, an hour away and whatever. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, I got into it. Well, the main reason was we had a incident here in town, and there was a hostage situation about 3 blocks over.
Wow.
And it turned out we couldn't hear them because we didn't have any of the radios, and B, we found out they're encrypted, so they're on an encrypted channel. So I still can't hear them as is.
Right.
But I went through, got the radio, and then I started hearing the guys on the repeaters in the area. It's like, okay, well, now that I know I don't have to actually get tested on Morse code, that I'll go ahead and get my technician. And then it's like, okay, I got my technician. Now I want to get my general, just so I can get HF privileges. And then I'm like, well, I'm already this far in, might as well go for the extra. And that was a year to the day that I got my tech, I got my extra.
So Renegade said he should do his extra. And then Hunter wants to know, is it really worth it?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. If you don't have communication, you don't have a plan.
Right.
Full stop, end of story. Your cell phone can go down. Who are you going to talk to? Because that means your internet's going to go down.
Right.
And all this stuff works without internet. You can send text messages over this without internet to your family, or you can send an email to your family and tell them that you're A-okay, or B, you need help.
So just since we might as well go down this rabbit hole for a minute. So could I send a text message to a family member who, say, had service outside of our service range, and it could go directly to their SMS, like their text messaging?
Yep. Yeah, you can do that through APRS. It's automatic position reporting service, I think is what it is, or automated packet reporting service. It's one of those. You can say I think I want to say it's the new Yaesu FTD5 or FT5D that you can send text messages over that. If you hit a gateway, you have no problem getting that text message out. There are services that will allow you to do that.
That's cool. Okay.
And then on the HFs, automated packet. Renegade's got it. If you are out on a sailboat and you want to send an email, how are you going to do it? You're 1,000 miles away from land. There's no signals out there. Well, you either have a satellite phone, which will cost you $1,000 to do that, or you can buy a $1,000 radio and send that email whenever you want to send it.
That's cool. And is that something that's really come on the last few years, or has that been around for a while?
No, it's been around a long time.
Okay.
It's actually been required. We'll go over that since 1912, that you've been required to have a radio on a ship if you are traveling more than 200 miles from land.
And something very important happened in 1912 that I'm sure we'll mention in a minute that
Yep.
changed a lot of safety things. So
absolutely.
Just going to shout out, I don't know this individual, but we got somebody new on Twitch. Not nice. There we go. Just said, oh boy. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think 9/11. Oh yeah. He's just kidding. So he's not a troll. Good to have you. But you know what? All kidding aside, we'll go down. 9/11 did change a whole lot of things for safety features. Just a about 100 years. Well, 100 years afterwards. Yeah, TSA. And you're not wrong. Not nice. Good to have you. I appreciate.
Yep.
We don't get a lot of traffic over on Twitch, so share the wealth.
Yeah, and I have the fact that 9/11, was a part of ham radio as we get a little bit further down this list. So,
well, want to dive in? Let's start with the history, and we'll work our way through. Anybody have questions as we go along? Throw them out. And Life Done Free just said, "Hey, Tool, good to have you." And cool. All right, so let's start. Nate, you go, and we'll work our way through.
No problem. So I have it as starts roughly about 1850s. The telegraph was invented, and that was strictly wired. So you had to run wires. You had a wire across the ocean going over to the between UK and the US, and then roughly about 1888, Heinrich Hertz figured out that you could do this without having that wire down through or under the ocean or strung between towns. And once that was figured out, roughly about 1890s, I guess if I could say this name,
Marconi.
Yeah, Marconi, Guglielmo Marconi adapted Hertz's theory into a communication set. And this was all done through Morse code.
Can you imagine? I mean, I don't know. I think about the things we've seen in our lifetime, but the things that somebody was born in, say, I don't know, 1820, 1830, and if they lived to, 1920, 1930, just the fact that, first off, you have your first recorded pictures, your first recorded video, motion pictures. And then all of a sudden they realize, hey, we can send signals down a wire. And then after that, they're like, oh, well, why don't we just eliminate the wire?
Yeah, exactly.
And that must have blown their mind. I think it would have, I don't know. It would have seemed like black magic to people at that time, I would think.
Right. And if it wasn't for Marconi, you wouldn't have cell phone signal or cell phones today. That's what it comes down to. Him playing around and hams in general playing around. You wouldn't have a cell phone.
So as preppers, of course, we love to talk about comms and communications and things like that. There's also something else that we all that a lot of people seemed interested in, and that's CMEs, coronal mass ejections, or nowadays even an EMP. But so back, telegraph had to have been pretty young when, what was it, the Carrington event happened?
Yeah, that was, I think, supposedly 1860s, if I remember. I'm going to call a little bit of BS on the Carrington event. And that's only because you can't find any articles or any news media or anything in the encyclopedias from that time about the Carrington event. And if it was as big as they say it was, you'd see something somewhere.
So the idea behind it was that it basically overloaded, because there really couldn't have been a whole lot of systems, period. Like maybe a few rudimentary transformers or something at that time.
Right. It was transformers, and then you also had supposedly power coming over the wires and burning up gear. It was actually supposedly sending signals and powering up radios at the time. Or powering up the actual telegraph systems, and supposedly it wiped out the entire system. But
so Josh Renegade said we wouldn't have radio without hams. It was amateurs who discovered it and have been at the forefront. Because, again, here we are live streaming over the World Wide Web. My grandfather used to say, "Did you ever hear about that new highway, the information superhighway?"
Yep.
But really, none of this would be here without that. And
right.
You think about the families that would sit around the radios in the 20s and the 30s to get information. It must have been pretty cool. The guys listening to War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells scaring the living shit out of everybody because they really thought Martians were landing.
Right. Absolutely.
All of that's pretty cool.
And that was AM, which the first AM transmissions was like 1906.
Okay.
And that was thanks to the Columbian University Amateur Radio Club, or the Wireless Telegraph Club of Columbia University, were the ones that figured out that. But the first transmission across the Atlantic was Glace Bay, Nova Scotia to Cornwall, England, with a 60,000 watt transmitter using four 210-foot tall towers with a spark gap transmitter.
So from what I understand, so that is in Cape Breton, way out on the tip, the far end of Nova Scotia. That's where I grew up.
Yep.
And growing up, we always had there was two actually. I thought of another one while we were just talking. We had these heritage moments, they called them, and they were, government sponsored, whatever you want to call them, history kind of snippets, and they were about 30 seconds to a minute. And one of them was this one right here, where they show he's sitting there and he's on the edge of his seat and he's like, it's not going to work, and then finally it comes through, right? And because of course there'd be a delay, even though it goes at the speed of light. I mean, by the time it gets down to them and they figure it out and send it back. But another one, and I don't know if you're going to mention this or not, but have you ever heard of the Halifax explosion?
No, I've heard about it, but I don't have it in here. I know there was the telegraph came with that, like the telegraph sent
a guy. So for anybody who doesn't know, in Halifax Harbor in Nova Scotia, there was a munitions ship that collided with another ship, caught fire. It exploded and was the largest non-nuclear explosion at the time in the world, or largest non-nuclear peacetime explosion is what they called it.
Period. Full stop, I think.
Yeah, it was insane. So you can go downtown in Halifax. Actually, I took my kids there last year and you could see some things, but there are still debris lodged in some of the buildings up high they've left there. So there was a telegraph operator who sacrificed his life to stop a train from coming in. He stayed at the post and tapped it out until they caught it, and so just interesting. It's neat how ham was at the forefront, or radio in general.
Yep. And I remember, because I listened to a lot of history stuff, and I remember hearing about that telegraph operator during that actually stopped, because I think it was a commuter train coming in.
It was. And of course, trains were a big deal then, right? So
right. And there was also a munitions train, I think, behind it, maybe.
I think so. Yeah. Because the devastation, we were at the presentation there at the museum last year, me and the girls, and it was, it looked like a nuclear wasteland afterwards. It just completely devastated the landscape.
Oh, yeah.
So where do we go from there? Oh, we got Kentucky Sustainable Living. Good to have you. Oh, and Hunter says, an old man told me that the lines caught fire. All hearsay, though. So
yeah, and that's one of the things I always hear, too. There's actually a really good video on the Carrington event, and I think I sent it to you.
You did, yep.
The guy's a little bit of a crackpot. I'll post it in the Telegram group when we're done here. He's a little out there, but he brings up some points that's like, I could see that not really happening. And he goes through the Encyclopedia Britannicas from the day all the way up until
great. He's the type of guy that our buddy Art Bell would have loved to interview, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So
where do we go from there?
We already got the AM, but in 1904, two Boston 8th graders built a transmitter and receiver and were able to use their go Morse code 8 miles away.
That's crazy.
8th graders. What are 8th graders doing now?
I know my seventh graders are pretty good kids. Right, I know what the average 8th grader's doing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Arguing. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah.
But the fact that those two kids were smart enough to build that system on their own was pretty good.
Renegade wants us to do a Nikola Tesla episode.
I was debating throwing him in here because he had some stuff to do with ham radio, but not a whole ton.
Kentucky mentions what I was going to mention, so there you go, guys. Looking for litter boxes in the school. So moving right along, yeah.
Exactly. All right, so 1910, required radio equipment to be installed on ships 200 miles out to sea with a range of 100 miles. So that was our Congress required that any U.S. flag ship was required to have a radio on board.
Now, there was a certain ship that sunk a couple of years later that would have been a British ship, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they actually had the radio on board.
Oh.
They were able to send out the telegraph or the HF signal that they were sinking, and I think it was it? I don't remember what the ship that came was. It Lusitania? That
I
sticks in
think
my
it
head
might
for
have
some
been,
reason.
yeah.
Heard it and came to the rescue, and they so that was 1912, and they were able to get survivors because of ham radio, and the operators getting that off before the ship sank. So they did have a radio on board, and there were people in there staffing it at the time that it happened. But 1912, the big radio act came through, and that required um, the radios to be staffed 24/7.
Because somebody was sleeping, weren't they? Or
The
and they
captain was sleeping, I think.
so just out of this is interesting. I never thought of this. So if the Titanic had happened 2 or 3 years prior, there's a good chance it would have completely sunk with no survivors and would
Yep,
have been completely unknown what happened to it.
absolutely. I mean,
Wow.
if you're talking 1909 or 1910,
Right.
yeah, it very well could have sunk with everybody on board, and nobody would have been saved.
That's great. I mean, some might have gotten the lifeboats, but whether they, how many days would it have been? I forget how far out they were. I think they were another day or so, So we're talking
Yeah,
24, maybe 48 hours before somebody even came looking for them, right?
yeah.
And
I
you wouldn't know where to find them. Somewhere between New York and London, right? Or England.
Yeah, I think they were up kind of by Nova Scotia, if I remember.
Yeah, because there are Titanic victims, or that were buried in Halifax, which was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, I think that was the closest city, if I remember. So I saw one in there, Hunter. Ham radio. What the first recorded amateurs that I have is 1904, and that was the two eighth graders.
Yes, sir.
So your first transmission across the Atlantic was 1902, and then 1904 you had the Boston eighth graders building their receiver and transmitter. So
How fast that technology spread, hey?
yeah, I mean magazines were all coming out with the information. They were giving a ton of stuff out there, and just kind of people were following along and wanted to do it. I mean, you could buy this stuff at the hardware store real cheap and build it yourself.
No Radio Shacks back then.
Not yet.
Well, I guess there's no Radio Shacks now, are there?
there's one in California, I think.
Okay, kind of like Blockbuster. It's just
Yeah, exactly. So, got to dating yourself there. Blockbuster.
I remember Radio Shack. It changed its name to The Source up here in Canada, but
Yep,
Radio Shack was kind of. I found it a boring place myself, but I wasn't into that kind of stuff when I like tech, but yeah.
I wish there were more Radio Shacks around, because instead of running to Ace and Walmart today, I could have hit up that store and bought some ham radio equipment, because they probably would have had it.
Yep.
And get the adapter that I needed to do what I'm kind of planning on doing later.
And what I found was cool about Radio Shack was, at least in Canada, they were in small towns. You didn't have to go to a big shopping center. So like my town was 2,300. We had one. Matagan, which was like 800 people, a little French community, they had a Radio Shack. So, I mean, they definitely catered to the smaller towns, which was nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we had one, and we used to live in Carroll Stream, and there's one like 5 minutes from our house. But I wasn't ham back then, so I had no reason to go there.
Maybe we'll have to do an episode on Radio Shack at some point. That would be fun.
Right, absolutely.
Everybody loves nostalgia. I mean, look, Renegade spent many hours in Radio Shack. Chris Dixon built Solar Robotics in Radio Shack. Kentucky loved Radio Shack.
Yep.
Cool.
It was a fun store. I remember going there as a kid and getting a whole bunch of stuff with my dad. It was a pretty cool store to walk in, and if I remember, they did have amateur radio stuff there.
Yes. So, yeah, they did. The little things like the
shortwave radios
and all the pieces for building them and repairing them. You couldn't get that anywhere else.
Right. Absolutely. So next up, still staying in 1912 around the Titanic. So this was the big thing. They passed the Radio Act of 1912, which required the ships to have the stuff on board.
Okay.
And it was also the first laws on the books to limit operators to the 200-meter band and shorter. So we don't have the 200-meter band anymore. That was kind of taken away from us. But we still have, I'm looking at my chart right now, we have 160, 80, 75, 60, 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10 for HF.
Yes, sir.
And then you get into UHF, VHF as 6, 2, 222, 440, 900, and 1240. But it also goes up all the way to 10 gigahertz if you want to get into it.
So what would the difference between 160 and 200 meters be?
It'd be closer in. So really 160, you're kind of limited to shooting your signal directly up and come back down in like maybe a 200 to 400 mile range.
Okay.
So that was kind of what you're limited to. 80 is really kind of about the same. And then 40 meters, it really depends on what time of day it is. During the day, it's real short, and at night, it can go real long.
Is that to do with cloud cover or
no? It changes with the sun.
Okay.
As soon as the sun goes down, the F layer, if I remember, I think it's the F layer, all becomes the D, E, and F all come into the F layer, and it goes a little bit further. So
Kentucky says NVIS. Do you know what?
Yep, that's near vertical incident skywave.
Nice.
So that is basically you have your antenna 5 feet up off the ground.
Okay.
And it really only works for 80 and or 160, 80, and 40. It'll shoot your signal straight up and then it'll come back down. Okay. If you actually have like an 80 meter or 160 meter antenna a quarter wavelength off the ground, you'll actually get some distance out of it.
Okay.
But if you look at it, 160 meter antenna, a quarter wavelength of that would be 40 meters up off the ground is 120 feet.
Oh yeah. So it becomes difficult to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people are going to throw a tower up at 120 feet? Feasibly.
Right.
It can be done, but feasibly, you're looking at trees.
Sure.
So, and that's some real tall trees.
And Renegade, everybody's throwing out big words that I don't know. So, ionospheric. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I assume that's what we're talking about with.
Yeah, so the ionosphere has to do with your skip. That's how you get. The ionosphere is the easiest way to prove that the world is not flat.
Oh, come on.
Because if the Earth were flat, 2 meters, you'd be able to get over into Europe without a problem.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah. So 40. Yeah. Remember, we've been talking about this for a while. This is my brother-in-law. He's been coming in quite often. Remember, I was saying how we need a simple system for your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
For my brother-in-law. Yeah. He said, the 40. We'll make it work. We'll get something there for sure. But
yeah. Well, you guys are real close. You could probably even do a GMRS.
10 miles. I don't know. It's tough.
You throw some power behind it, get a couple 50-watt GMRS radios, you'd be able to do it.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if those are LEAG, whatever, legal here in Canada anyway. So we'll see.
At least some 2 meter.
Yeah, that's true. I could anyway. We'll probably do that.
Yeah, both of you guys can get your license.
Oh, yeah. I have mine. So, yeah.
Now, with this is where it comes in that you were talking about the term ham comes in.
Yeah, because is there a definitive answer on this?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's really a derogatory term to amateur radio operators.
Oh, okay.
And it was the telegraph, the professional telegraph, the wired guys were saying that hams or amateurs were ham-fisted sending Morse code.
Oh, and they weren't good at it, in other words.
They weren't very good at it.
Yeah.
So they were real sloppy, didn't do real well at it. So, that's where the term ham came from, ham-fisted.
That's cool.
A lot of hams have kind of laughed it off and just whatever.
Yeah.
And kind of adopted it, and it's pretty well stuck.
Well,
So
because if you say ham radio, people know what you're talking about,
yeah,
basically. They think
yeah,
about a weirdo that hangs out in his basement and, builds things out of old car parts. But
yeah,
that is, everybody knows what you have an idea of what ham radio is, right?
right, absolutely. I mean,
Uh,
most people you talk about it, they know what it is,
sure.
and
They have
that's
an
that.
idea that it's
It's
something people can do, if times are bad and you can communicate, right?
right. I mean, amateur radio was the original thing, but yeah, hams have kind of shortened it up and gone with the ham setup.
It's all about
So
embracing it, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was funny. I had heard about that a couple years ago. Right when I got my license because I was looking into it. So
Yes. So, Woody Harrelson, he's talking about from 2012. Do you remember the movie? Um, so Woody Harrelson plays kind of an Alex Jones type podcaster
yes,
radio guy, but he's a ham
yep,
radio dude. That's what.
yeah, the pirate broadcast.
Yep.
Yep, yep,
Just wanted you to touch on Hunter's kind of comment or question here. He was saying he heard about people tossing antennas up into a tree, and he thought antennas were a metal stick.
yep. So I have two antennas at my house. I have a 130-foot long wire. It's called an NFED. There's a little matching box. It's I'll give you something like this. It's about
Okay.
the size of this. This is a flashlight, and it sits on top of my shed, or really the garage. And then there's 130 feet of wire that goes up into a 95-foot tall tree, and the peak's at about 50 feet.
Okay.
And then it comes back down to my rear fence line, and that's the main antenna that I use. I also have a vertical that is a steel stick, basically, that's on the side of the house that runs 4 bands, which is 40, 20, 15, and 10. But that long wire antenna, I can get 160 through 6 without a problem.
Okay. Now, how do you? Okay, so you've got this great big long wire, this piece of wire that obviously is tuned for, would it be a quarter wavelength of 160 meters? Is that
it's a quarter wavelength of 80 meters.
80 meters. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because 80 and 160 are.
Or no, it's a half wavelength of 80.
80. Okay. So how do you have to tune it in order to get the different ones, or?
Yep. So they have mine is really an off the shelf buy. It's from Chameleon.
Okay.
It's a Chameleon MCOM Base 3 antenna.
Okay.
And they sell for about $170.
Okay.
Which isn't bad. It's super easy to build. I've actually built a antenna. I have a 40 meter. I have to pull it out of a bag. But it's about the size of a hockey puck.
Oh, okay.
And it's got a quarter wavelength or a half wavelength of 40 meters all rolled up in there. And that'll give me 40, 20, 15, and 10.
What do you use the most?
I use the NFED the most.
Okay.
It's better listening antenna, and it's also a better transmitting antenna for what I want to
do. What band do you transmit or communicate on the most?
I go anywhere from 40 up to 10 usually.
Okay.
I don't play a lot on 80 meters, 80 and 75. They're so close to each other. Those are a lot of you hear the stereotypical hams on there.
Okay.
Sitting down in the basement, drinking, talking about their health problems. And that's not me.
Yeah, I get it. That's cool. So why do you kind of gravitate toward the 40? What is your reasoning for that?
40 is, sorry.
That's okay.
40 meters is where our net is for the ham radio crash course. That's a YouTuber out of California, Josh Nass. He's Kilo India 6 November Alpha Zulu, if I remember. His YouTube channel has a net based out of Ohio. And I'll check in there every Friday night usually.
And what's a net?
It's basically a network of a bunch of guys getting together and just talking ham radio. They ask that you check in and then you wait your turn basically, and then they come back to you and ask if you have anything to add for the week or what you did in ham radio
Okay.
or kind of some fun stuff. My favorite net of the year is actually the CQ Santa.
Oh, hey, that times in right nice with this time of year too, right?
It does. And the girls actually did it a couple weeks ago. I put the video up. We recorded the whole thing. I had just a GoPro on the desk,
Mm-hmm.
and you can clearly hear the radio. And it's the girls checked in. Sorry, so I checked in on the radio. You'll hear the whole exchange. I checked in about a half hour before that, and then once they came around to me, they made sure that I could still hear them, no problem. And then they transferred us to whichever operator could hear me the best.
Okay.
And then I have to identify myself with my call sign, and then the girls can come on and talk as long as I am with them operating the radio.
Right. Yeah.
So they both got to talk to Santa on the ham radio.
That's cool.
They had a blast. They got to ask their questions and wish Santa a Merry Christmas and ho 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 and all that other fun stuff. And it was like a 5-minute exchange.
Sure.
But
so how hard is it to contact the North Pole being way up on the top of the planet there or the globe? In theoretically, of course, or
theoretically, if you can get a hold of Russia or any of the kind of that area. So I'm looking at the map right now that I got.
Sure.
If you're going to get into Sweden, Norway, Finland, or Russia, you'd be going over the North Pole.
Okay.
That's a short path.
Cool. So it is possible then.
Yeah. If you want to if you want to make contact with those people and you have a beam antenna, you want to point your beam due north from me being in Chicago and go over the North Pole because it's the shortest distance.
Right.
Instead of trying to go around to the east.
So I guess I wasn't thinking correctly, but I mean, going over the North Pole is no bigger deal than going over to like South Africa or somewhere like that, because you're,
right.
You're just following the curvature or the non-flatness of the earth, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, sorry. Hunter says allegedly over both.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to, there's a couple of questions or comments and stuff, but Renegade said ham radio is the OG hacker tinkerer culture. All your modern inventors, coders, and innovators have the same spirit that made ham radio what it is today. And ham radio evolved into everything we know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I played with stuff. I built antennas. Out in the garage, I have a homemade out of PVC. It's a Yagi antenna. So it's PVC and a tape measure from Harbor Freight.
I made one of those too. I didn't have a lot of success, but I made one.
That's what I use for our fox hunts. So our fox hunts is where you want to go. Somebody transmits on a frequency, and then you need to go find where they're transmitting from. So basically, you're going to go find them.
So it's a game that sharpens your skills, right?
Exactly. So
Nina, or not, I can never remember if it's Nina or Nina. Sorry. Nina says, is ham still very male dominated, or are more ladies getting involved?
Ham radio is definitely male dominated. I will wholeheartedly admit that, but I will tell you there are more women getting involved. That's cool. A lot of it. Erin's in the chat here. I see her commenting. She got her license last spring.
Okay.
And it took her a little bit to get it. She doesn't have the technical knowledge like I did of this before I got into it, but she still wanted to learn how to use it. I threw the radio in her truck, so she figured she'd at least try and get it. She actually did really good.
Nice.
I will wholeheartedly admit she did better on the test than I did.
Right.
She studied a lot longer than I did, where I just kind of blew through it and, was able to get my license. It took her a little bit, but she got it. There are more women getting involved, and I'm glad to see that.
I am as well. And Not Nice says STEM, so that's what science, technology, engineering, and
math.
Yeah. Math, yeah. I might have got the T wrong. If I did, I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, dominate by males because of their interest. And I think a lot of that has to do, I mean, you're brought up and with certain ideas and certain concepts. And so you're like, oh, I'll get interested in that. And it just kind of perpetuates over the generations. So it's it's neat. It's the same with my girls. Like Olivia, I taught her right from a young age how to change her tires out. And Gracie's very good with tools. So it's important, if we want the young ladies or the ladies in our lives to be interested in that kind of stuff, is to take the time and to teach them, and just
Right.
like me taking home ec in high school, right? If I wanted to learn how to cook or sew, I took the classes, and nothing wrong with that, of course.
Yep, absolutely.
Hunter wanted to know about fox hunting.
Yes, that is exactly what it's used for. Fox hunting is used to track people without a call sign or people who are jamming a repeater. We
Intentionally or unintentionally, right?
Yes, and we actually had somebody jamming our local repeater, and we tracked them down within a block.
And was it on purpose or was it just?
We don't know yet. We think we know who it is.
Okay.
We think it was unintentional, but it locked our repeater up for 14 hours. So
not nice, says the FBI is coming. So
yeah, well, I probably got one of those attached to me, to the hip, but that's neither here nor there.
So what's next on the history?
All right, so let's see. We got 1917, World War I. Congress orders all ham radio operators to cease transmitting.
And did I hear it right? They also did that during World War II. Is that right?
Yes, during World War II, it's a little. I'm not sure how that worked because I find a lot of conflicting information on that. But 1917, the ham radio operators were required to cease operation and dismantle their equipment.
Dismantle?
Yes, so they had to take everything down. During the war, there are no hams allowed because they were only allowed HF frequencies.
What we cut out there? Something frequencies?
HF, high frequencies.
Okay. Yep.
So your HF bands that are long distance, they're only allowed to be on that.
Okay.
There was no 2 meter, 70 centimeter yet. That didn't come until I want to say the 60s.
So did they just not want people jamming up the airways, or were they worried about like?
They were worried about people contacting others across the pond.
Okay.
And also they understood back then that you could track the signal.
Very similar to what was it? I don't want to call it wrong. I want to call it the Arab Spring. Do you remember a few years back? I might have the name wrong for it, but there was the uprising in some of the Muslim countries where they were, and they basically shut down all comms within the country. Similar type of thing, I suppose.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think that was Iran, if I remember.
Yes,
shut down a lot of comms during that. But yeah, they were required to hand over equipment, dismantle their equipment. And that's kind of really what I found on that. I would imagine a lot of the same that happened in 1917 also happened in 42.
Sure.
That was.
I wonder if it would be such a. I hate to even think about it today, but I wonder if it would be nearly as big a concern today. I'm thinking most comms would be secure encrypted satellites, which wouldn't affect ham communications anyway.
Right, because we're not allowed to be encrypted. Everything's got to be out in the air.
Right.
So there literally is nothing encrypted about ham radio.
Now, I don't know if we talked about this last time you were on here or not, but the kind of the old-fashioned encrypt. Well, okay, let's go back to our favorite post-apocalyptic book series, Going Home, right? I think it's in that one, isn't it, where they start putting out radio broadcasts with like the chairs against the wall, that kind of thing? Yeah. So is that technically okay on ham, or is that not okay on ham?
No.
Is it
because you're hiding the meaning of the transmission.
Okay. So it's against the spirit of the law for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean that it wouldn't necessarily happen. Right.
Right. You can say it. Nobody's going to come after you and get you.
It's like if you and I did the whole book thing where what book we're taking a word out of, and I tell you page and right. So okay.
Yep, absolutely. So that lasted until the 1919
Okay.
when the war ended. The ARRL, the Amateur Radio Relay League, lobbied to get amateurs back on the air. And this is when everybody was able to get relicensed, and your system
Oh,
kind of went in with your current call signs right now, where you have the different areas. I am a 9 call. November Alpha 9 Tango Echo is my call sign. So I am Illinois, and
okay.
9 is Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana.
Right. That's how that works, isn't it?
Yep. And then 1921, American amateurs challenged the UK amateurs to receive radio contacts from across the pond. So this is U.S. amateurs who are working Morse code are now starting to play with voice, and this is all AM.
Oh,
So
right.
this
Because previous it was all just,
Morse code, yeah.
yep.
So AM was brought in around 1908, give or take. Or no, 1906 was the first AM transmission.
Okay.
Um, so here we are, the 21. They were, kind of joking back and forth to finally make the contacts. And it wasn't until 1923, November 27th, the first transatlantic AM contact between American Fred Schnell and French Leon Deloy was made.
That's so. Just about 100 years ago was the first transatlantic voice communication.
Yep, voice communication using AM.
So wireless. So there was no need to
Yep,
have a subsea cable or whatever.
correct.
Very cool.
So I mean that took a long time. You're talking 21 years from the invention to figuring it out and actually making the contact. And I think a lot of that had to do with solar cycle. So you'd have to go
Right.
back and look and see how that solar cycle lines up. Every 11 years, you get the peaks and the valleys.
And you also would have lost 4 years of um, innovation because of the war as well,
Yeah,
right?
during the war. Yeah, absolutely.
Huh. Interesting.
So yeah, I mean that's pretty quick, honestly. Um, so 1927 and 1928, somewhere in that range, the International Radio Telegraph Conference in DC standardized the radio bands with HF for 80/75, 40, 20, and 10
So
were the only
almost what we
band.
have today.
Yep, almost what we have today.
Just want to
Um,
shout out to Sunnyland Camper. Good to see you in here. Kilo 8 Romeo Oscar Yankee. Is that right? Yeah,
yep.
there we go.
So he's going to be either Michigan, Ohio, maybe Pennsylvania, I think would be my
Nice.
guess, somewhere around there. Um, then 1933, single sideband experiments begin with Robert Moore, Whiskey 6, Delta Echo India.
And what is that?
So single sideband, so AM, you have a carrier in the center, and then you have two sides of the signal.
Okay.
So single sideband takes out that carrier and like half of the signal and puts all your power in that single sideband, so it's a shorter distance
Right.
and it gives throws more power behind it.
Okay.
It so that was 1933 is when that started to come around.
Nice.
Um, a lot of your HF contacts are all single sideband. If it's 40, 80, or 160, you're looking at lower sideband.
Okay.
And if you are 40 and up, it is upper sideband.
Oh, nice.
So there is a cutoff as well. So
So,
I'm
Sunnyland is actually in Illinois,
Yep,
which is
I'm in
really
Illinois
cool.
too. So I'm about 60 miles outside of Chicago. So you can come find me or find our club.
And Sunnyland just bought property in Missouri. We're
Oh,
all
there you
buying
go.
property down further south, aren't we? This is great. Nice.
Congratulations. One of these days we will.
Oh yeah. Well, you
Um,
guys can use my property down in Tennessee anytime. So
there you go. That'll be fun. All right. So the next thing I have is the patron saint of ham radio.
patron say I don't know. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
So 1941, priest Maximilian Kolbe, Sierra Papa 3 Romeo November, was arrested by the Germans and accused of being a spy. This is in Poland.
During World War II.
During World War II. He was martyred by taking place of a prisoner who was being executed for escaping. So he stepped up in defense of this person who tried to escape the camp and was executed by the Germans.
Wow.
October 10th, 1982, he was canonized the patron saint of amateur radio by the Pope.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
I thought that was a joke, but that's legit.
Yeah. Yeah, many think he is the patron saint of ham radio.
Oh, I got to get you a medallion. I wonder if they make medallions for him.
You have to look around. You never know.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that was one of the things I learned. I had never known about that.
No, me either. Really neat.
Yep. So that was kind of the interesting thing. And then World War II, you also have Americans are prohibited from making contact on ham radio. Now, this goes two different ways that I hear. They were limited to 112 megahertz, or they weren't allowed to be on the air at all.
Okay.
So I kind of see it both ways. But they were, once again, talks of equipment being confiscated for the war effort, and hams would show up and help out with the war effort and be using their old equipment.
Isn't that so? Yeah, I get it. It's weird, but I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like just keep the stuff at your house, and right. I mean, that's why you had Mars. That whole Mars service, the military auxiliary radio service.
Oh, okay. So was that like a volunteer?
Yeah, it was real big during Korea and Vietnam.
Okay.
Where guys could actually call back to home using the Mars system.
Well, that's what I was thinking which would have been really cool because that was pre-satellite radio or pre-satellite telephone days for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of it. You still have the Mars going on right now. I've kind of looked into it, but I don't have the time, nor do I want to buy the equipment for it.
Sure.
You're required to dedicate 20 hours a month, if I remember, and you have to be able to run whatever mode they dictate you need to run. So it's anything from digital to voice to...
And you have to buy the equipment too.
No, they will supply the equipment.
Oh, okay.
But it's still setting it up and having the separate system and making sure it's always up and running. So it's there's a lot to do with it. I would be interested, but I have too many irons in the fire right now.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's no way.
I don't know many people. I mean, I shouldn't say this. I'm the guy who's always encouraging people to start side hustles, but it's a hell of a commitment to find 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month to commit to anything, let alone a volunteer kind of thing. So yeah, I get it.
And honestly, if I can get it 5 hours a week playing radio, I'm playing radio for myself.
Sure. And I understand that.
I mean, I had a ton of fun today just messing around. So it was.
Nate sent me messages all afternoon. He's like, I got this done. It's like, it's too awesome to have guys like you on, Nate, because you care about what you want to talk about and you care about coming on the show. You know, I was just thinking that when I was upstairs earlier having supper, and I'm like, I don't ever want to take guys like you for granted because, man, it's awesome to have somebody who's willing to put that much work into coming on to chat with me. It's cool.
Yeah,
so thanks, man.
I had a lot of fun. There's some stuff I wanted to try out. We'll kind of talk about that stuff when we kind of finish up here. We're kind of getting towards the end anyway.
Yeah. We get talking, right? So it's okay.
So you got World War II ends, 1950s single sideband gets real popular, and they start coming out with rigs that you can actually purchase at the store with single sideband. So like the old Collins machines or the Heath kits, stuff like that. You're able to get your hands on those. And then 1961, Oscar 1 was the first satellite launched into space with ham radio on it.
Oh, with ham, yes, because when I did my history of prepping, the 1950s kind of, the ham radio guys were the first ones that found. I want to say it was Sputnik, but I can't remember.
Yep.
They were the ones who discovered that Russia had a satellite in space before the U.S.
Yep, absolutely. They were able to pick it up on their thing. It was something new, and they were able to track it down.
And they probably would have grabbed it on 2 meter or something like that.
2 meter or 440. It would have been
Okay.
something line of sight. I know the International Space Station is 2 meter, and you can actually, sorry,
That's
you
okay.
can hit the space station with this cheap $20 HT if you wanted
That's
to.
crazy.
So this is Aaron's HT.
And that's just a long. What do they call those antennas? Is that
It's just a quarter wave,
okay?
like quarter wave vertical. So it's your standard HT.
And how long can you talk to them because they're moving fairly fast?
If you can get into the repeater, the contact can last up to 7 minutes.
Which is so at that point they're just out of range because of course they
Yes.
don't go over the horizon because
No, they go over the horizon.
Oh, I know. I just we're talking about flat. Yeah, right. I'm sorry. We pick on flat earthers around here a lot. You know, in the prepping community, we all everybody. Anyway, let's just put it that we question a lot of things, but there's one thing I've never questioned once in my life is whether the Earth is flat or round.
Right.
But anyway, keep going, Nate.
All right. So that satellite lasted 22 days up in orbit, and it came down on January 31st of 1962, I think.
Was it designed to be something that came down gradually? Or?
I think so, yeah. It lasted a long time.
Okay.
A lot longer than they thought, but you have like AO 50, Alpha Oscar 50 is another ham radio satellite, and I think that thing's been up there since the late 60s, early 70s, and it's still working. You can hear the CW as it comes over, and I think that's one of the ones that has the repeater in it.
Nice.
So you can actually make contact with that.
Sunnyland said that prepping's what got him into ham radio, and I think prepping is, us preppers and those who are into preparedness is probably a significant portion of those who keep ham radio alive.
Yeah, I would say so too. As I said earlier, if you don't have comms, you don't have a plan.
Right. And if you do have a plan and you don't have comms, you don't have much.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get through this real quick. 1979, the WARC bands, Whiskey Alpha Romeo Charlie bands, were added, and that was 30, 17, and 12.
All still usable today?
Yep, all still usable today.
Nice.
30 is a digital only, if I remember. There's no voice communications allowed on that, so that's mainly CW or Whisper or FT8, FT4, JS8, stuff like that. And then 1982, during the Falklands War, the Argentine forces seize phone and radio network to London, and hams are able to relay the information back and forth.
That's cool. See, that's one of the best things about ham. I think so.
Yep. So they were able to relay areas that were bombed, troop movements, stuff like that, and were actually kind of helped out with the war a lot. 1990s, your digital modes gained popularity. So that's like your FT8, FT4, JS8 call, Whisper, WSPR. It's a lot of stuff. As soon as you could hook a computer up to something, hams wanted to play with it.
Sure.
And they came up with their own digital modes. And a lot of it works really good.
I'm really intrigued by the digital end of things that don't require, either some sort of data connection or anything like that. I think that is, I think that's the future of ham in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, email is your main one.
Right.
The system's called WinLink, and it does have a little bit of a fee to it, if I remember. Okay. It's a couple bucks a year. But you're able to send email from anywhere. You could do it with 2 meters and 440, or you can do it with 80 meters or 20 meters. I could send an email direct to your radio if I wanted to from my house and not need internet.
That's cool. But so there must be some sort of intermediate party though in there, is there or not?
You got to have a laptop.
Okay.
And there's also, you're kind of paying for the nodes, if I remember.
But there is ways for instance, where you and I, as the crow flies, how far apart would we be? 1,000 miles?
Probably a little bit more than that, I would guess.
Okay. So even just say, we'll use 1,000 as a thing. But is there a way for you and I to contact digitally using only information that technology that we have in our own homes, like with Ham? Could you and I send either text messages or some sort of email type thing without needing someone else to transmit it?
Yeah, you can do it through ham radio.
Okay.
But you cannot, there's nothing that I know of other than ham radio that you can do for free.
Right. That's what I was. Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is, in a shit hits the fan grid down scenario, just for because we love to play those games. But you and I are, we want to contact each other because we're kind of in our own. I know we're a long ways apart, but we're in our own prepper cadre or whatever you want to call it, and we need to send a message to one another, but we don't really want it to be audible or audio. We'd like to send a text message for whatever reason. That's doable, hey, or some sort of text. Yeah. Okay.
You could do that through APRS or just straight up send an email.
Okay.
JS8 Call, Kentucky Sustainable Living has one in there. JS8 Call is actually a really interesting mode.
Okay.
That's one where you can do, like, you could do at Tim's workshop, and it would only have those people who are following that symbol, so to speak, receive that message and like actually have that message pop up.
Okay.
Everybody would hear it, but they wouldn't be necessarily looking for it. But if you wanted to go, everybody in the network at the workshop, hey, I need this, and it would send it out to everybody.
That's cool. Okay.
That had JS8 Call.
Well, if I can get off my ass and get HF up and running, maybe we'll have to put a workshop net together sometime.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
I've talked about doing a homesteading net.
That would be nice.
I just don't have the time.
I know. It's the time thing, right? But
yeah, and that's a lot of it.
So where do we go? Where do we go from there?
So I got a couple more small things here. 2006 is when the FCC dropped the code requirement for all licenses.
Morse code.
So I am a no code extra with a Baofeng UV5R, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. I studied. I was able to do it. I'm able to do it now. So, yeah. So if you guys are serious about getting your ham radio license, I would say now is the time to do it. Really, it was last year when they weren't charging the $35 fee to get your license.
That's a one-time fee?
One-time fee. It's so the way that works, you got about $15 to your local club.
Okay.
Which is going to pay for you to show up and take the test.
Right.
Because they have to mail it out to the FCC. The FCC comes back to you about a week later and says, I would like my $35. Can you please send that to me? And then we'll issue your call sign. So all in all, your first license, you're looking at like $50.
Which is about 2 beers at an arena.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so it's not much. Okay.
Right. Once you go from there, your next charge, if you wanted it, would be your vanity call sign.
Right.
They are charging for that. And they are not charging for renewals.
At the moment or period?
Period that I've heard so far. You are not being charged for renewals. That was one of the things that was brought up. I think that has been debunked. I will double check and verify, but I thought that's what I heard about a month ago, that renewals are not being charged. It's only your vanity and new issue.
Cool. Nothing wrong with that.
Right. So I got my vanity in like a week before the fee showed up. Erin got her license in right before that.
Sunnyland says he thinks they are charging now, so maybe
I'll have to look that up.
But even at that,
Yeah.
$3.50 a year for ham privileges, that's pretty damn cheap.
I'm not happy about it. It is what it is. It's the government being the government. But really,
oh boy, here we go. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, yeah.
Really, if you look at it, if you can't swing $35 for 10 years, how are you going to buy a $1,000 radio set?
That's what I was just thinking. Exactly. And now that doesn't mean you can't start with a Baofeng for $45 on, I don't know how much they are exactly, but on eBay, right? So
yeah, $35.
Yeah, exactly.
If that.
No, not nice says that's like a cheeseburger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come up to Canada, it's less than a cheeseburger.
Yep. Just be happy you're not Australia where it's $240 a year.
I don't even get me started on Australia. So I got a few questions starred for you too. When we finish the history, before we jump over into your cool tech stuff, I'll ask you.
All right. So let me knock out this last thing. The American disasters that hams helped with. You had 9/11. A lot of repeaters, or the main cell phone tower was up on the Trade Center. And that came down and killed cell phone signal for the entire island.
Jeez, I never thought of that. That's crazy, because you had one up that high, you probably wouldn't need one anywhere else, would you?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being, I was on top of of course, the one that you could go up on was the one with the antenna, because it was technically taller, right? So
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
So once that building came down, all cell signals ceased, along with a lot of repeaters, because a lot of repeaters were up there as well.
Sure, because it was the highest point in the city.
Yep. So you had a lot of simplex, and then Katrina was the next one.
Yep.
I know we had 3 or 4 members from our club specifically drive down for Katrina and help out with that. That would be our both of our old presidents went down there. So we have had 2 elderly gentlemen that drove down there for sure to go help with Katrina. And then 2017, the Red Cross requested 50 ham radio operators to deploy to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria.
I remember the videos from that hurricane. It was unreal.
Yep.
I don't know if they've ever actually recovered from it. I mean,
no, I think it's still a hot mess down there.
Yeah. And that's 6 years ago, man.
Yeah.
Sunnyland Camper says he worked Hurricane Marie on the hurricane net.
Yeah. If anybody wants to listen to that is a great net to listen to. It's 14.325 and 7.168 if I remember.
Would I be able to get that out here on the prairies, or is it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's net control all over the country.
Okay. So Sunnyland got a patch from that. That's cool.
Well,
I love patches.
The only ham radio related patch I have is this one when we work communications for the Sycamore Pumpkin Fest.
That's really cute, man. I like that little die cut patch.
Yeah. So we run communications for all the floats.
Very cool.
They got 117 floats that come through.
Okay.
And we got to keep them all in line, moving, and watch out for idiots that leave stuff behind. So
we got 3 questions we'll knock out before we jump over. Nate's got some pretty cool techie stuff he wants to do with us too tonight.
All right.
So, okay. Let's start with Not Nice over on Twitch. Like I said, again, nice to have you. How long would it take for the government or an authority to find you if you're transmitting radio signals for whatever reason?
5 minutes.
How come? Are you being facetious, or do they?
No, I'm not.
Easy. Okay.
Really, I can do that. I can give you a general area. Using the website QESDR.
Okay.
I can pick 3 web SDRs, and it's called Time on Demand. And I go to where your signal is, and if I hear you talking on all 3 of those, I can type that. I can triangulate you within a couple of miles.
Okay.
Off of that system, and it takes probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops.
So if we can do that, how much faster can whatever the government has on their end be, right?
Probably quicker. Now, reality, the government does not really care.
That's right. Stephen Harris used to say one of my favorite terms he always had was security by obscurity. You know, if
Mhm.
you're just some little guy that the government has no interest in, there's a good chance they're not going to pay attention to you.
Right. You know, all right, so if you're the guy tuning up, here's one for Sunnyland. If you're the guy tuning up on the Hurricane Watch Net, so hitting the tuner on your radio and blocking out the Hurricane Watch Net, there is not much you can do. Nobody's really going to say anything other than the net control operators complaining about it and people getting on your case. That's not much. But if you're the guy blocking the repeater for the fire department while
Right.
working a major fire up in the mountains, then you bet your ass they're going to come after you. And they have, and they continue to.
Keep your damn nose clean and keep your, you know
Right,
what I mean? I always tell people, don't stick your finger where you wouldn't stick your pecker. In other words,
right,
don't put yourself somewhere that's going to really do damage to you if they catch you.
right. Absolutely. Now, there are a couple of things. There's been some people on 40 meters, 7.200, which is kind of the dumpster fire channel 19 of ham radio.
Okay.
A few of those guys have been fined, and stuff have been taken away from them. You also have the 435 repeater
Okay.
over in California, which is I think you can listen to that on Broadcastify if I remember.
Okay.
That's a pretty rough, rough thing to listen on.
So Not Nice wants to know. I don't know if you know this answer. I may have known it at one time, but I don't know if I can remember it now. But it said, why does AM travel so well in the mountains versus FM?
All right, so FM. The easiest way to say this is you got to go tell me what frequencies you're working on. So if you're using FM, I'm going to assume you're going to be using 2 meter, 70 centimeter,
Okay.
which is line of sight. So that's like across town type deal. If you are on the other side of the mountain and you have the peak between you,
Yep.
and AM would work because it's bouncing off the ionosphere and coming back down on the other side of the mountain.
That makes sense. So it's going to skip over the peaks.
Correct, because
in theory.
In theory, because your antenna's in theory lower to the ground.
Okay.
So if you are in the mountains, either stand on the peaks and use 2 meter, 70 centimeter, or be in the valleys and use HF.
Okay.
So it's kind of the easiest way to put that.
I just looked up a picture too because I was kind of thinking that, but AM waves are longer, like a standard, your picture of a wave you would see. So it's going to skip up and over, whereas FM is very like that. So
well, it's because that's the longer the wave.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So your 2 meter wave is real short.
Mm-hmm.
A full wavelength is 2 meters.
Right.
But a full wavelength on 40 meters is 40 meters. So you're talking distance wise. Yeah, it's quite a bit different. You don't have anything FM lower than 10 meters. I'm looking at my chart right now.
And then Sunny Lamb, we talked about this a little bit. I don't know how far we get into it, but text and emails.
Yep. Yeah, WinLink. I saw that he commented that WinLink's free. I'll have to go back and look that up.
Okay.
I thought that was something with a paid service.
But
so dig that up.
Nate spent quite a bit of time setting up this right here, guys. This is pretty cool. Let's see what looks better. We got this. Yeah, let's do this. There we are.
So this is basically Grid Tracker. What you see here is I'm the center. All the pink lines going out are all the stations that have heard me. All the yellow boxes are the stations that I currently can hear.
Okay.
As you can see, there's a lot in the U.S. I can also see, I can look a little bit better. Got one up in France, South Africa, Germany, up in Canada, probably up by you, Tim. I would say that's kind of that
Oh
one.
yeah, I didn't know that the yellow one right there.
Yeah, the yellow one directly above my head.
Yeah, that's really close to the American border, but I guess it's either just south of the border or just north of the border there.
I'm talking about that one that's a little bit further up.
Oh,
There's one
yeah,
south, and there's
Yeah.
one above the border.
Geez, Nate, that's really close to me.
So
Yeah, that almost looks like either Saskatchewan or right on the Alberta border, which is about where I am.
right. So this one, we're going to try and see how this goes. This is going to be a 2-minute transmission. I just clicked the button
That's cool.
to transmit. So this will go for...
So this is not Memorex, folks. This is live.
Yep, this is live right now.
For anybody over the age of 40 might remember that.
Yeah, we'll see how this works out.
So explain what you're doing right now,
So
Nate.
basically, I'm sending out a whisper report, and in a couple of minutes, this will pop up with any new signals that hear me.
This is not digital. This is through the radio, or this is just through ham radio, right?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
this is just through ham radio. So you can see that little red transmit signal behind your logo
Hang
that
on.
I'm transmitting.
Let's get rid of that while there we go. Okay.
I'm on 40 meters, 7.038.600. And I'm currently 51 seconds into the transmission.
So it sends for a solid 2 minutes, does it?
Solid 2 minutes. Yep.
And then people will hear is it just a test tone or is it your call sign or what is it sending?
Yeah, it's call sign in my grid location.
Okay.
So I am EN51 something.
So you were a minute or last time you ran this test, you were hearing somebody way down on the south tip of Africa?
Yeah. So that's I still hear them, I think.
That is so far away.
Yeah. And this is 40 meters at night.
So okay. You see the contacts you made on the East Coast there, right up and down the East Coast?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a full wave, maybe not a full wavelength, but that's kind of the extent of where it's skipping to. And then
that's your first skip.
And then if there were some in the Atlantic Ocean, they would probably go about as far again.
Mm-hmm.
And then then each one would be like, so each of those longer ones over into Africa and Europe are just multiples of whatever that is to the East Coast, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
So that's done with that. So we're going to let this in about 3 minutes that will update.
Okay.
But in the meantime, that link that I posted in the Telegram group.
Okay, let's go to the Telegram. Yes, shameless plug for the Telegram group, guys. You know what? While we're at it, let's go in here and I'm going to share the Telegram group link. So if anybody's new here, that is our place where we all hang out. That is the place to go for Telegram and for the workshop community. So let's throw that up first.
Yep.
So if anybody wants to join, feel free. And then where did the link? Oh, right there. Okay.
Yep, but I also put it in the private chat as well too.
Okay. There, I'll send it in here because a lot of people can't. Anyway, I got to figure out a way to let all the people who are in here regularly post links because YouTube kind of filters that out. So
okay, so that link that Tim just posted is the Whisper Network spots, and that is the last 1,000 spots that have heard my call sign, given the mileage from my location in kilometers and miles, the signal report, the grid number that I am in, EN51, their call sign, and their location. So I just transmitted on 40 meters. And the furthest that picked me up is 8,500 miles away, Delta Papa 0 Papa Oscar Lima at JF85LK. So let's look that guy up.
So 8,500 miles, that has to be close to halfway around the world.
12,000 is the full all the way around.
Oh, well, it's more than halfway then. Jeez. So is this the image we're seeing now? Has that refreshed? Did I miss that or is it not yet?
Yeah, refresh in 50 seconds.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I can actually cut this down so we see less than just that.
That's really neat.
Give me just a
So
second.
have you made? In theory, could you pick up yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so that's everybody that I heard on this last transmission.
Okay.
So that's within 5 minutes. So I set it to now within 30 minutes. So when this next one pops up in 20 seconds, you'll see just who heard me in the past 20 seconds or past transmission.
For those who are on audio, just so you know, Nate, well, like we explained, he sent out a signal, and we have a map up here of the entire world. There's yellow dots on it that show the stations that Nate is receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And in a moment, we're going to get pink. There we go. Some pink lines that show the contacts that have sent back to Nate.
Yep.
That picked him up. So what do we have here, Nate?
So I have Australia.
Okay.
Or not in Australia. I have
Alaska,
Kilo Lima 3 Romeo, and he is 2,800 miles. And then I have into Germany, Delta Lima 0 Papa Foxtrot. He's 4,600 miles. And then the furthest one on that transmission was Turkey, Tango Alpha 4 / Golf 8 Sierra Charlie Uniform. And that was 5,872 miles.
So the one that was 8,000 miles, where was that?
8,000 miles is JF. I got to go back and find that one because that did not show up on the spot page. It shows up on the spot page, but not on Grid Tracker.
Okay.
So that was Kilo Golf 34XB. So we're going to look this grid up, and then I can share what it looks like.
South Africa? That's what my Google search says, but I might be wrong.
That's what you have, South Africa?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Now, on the Grid Tracker, so there is one pink rainbow here, guys, that I can see that shoots way over. Is that into Russia or
Turkey?
Turkey. Okay.
Yeah.
That one picks up a lot, doesn't it? Because you've had that before.
Yeah, I've gotten that Turkey one pretty much all day. I do have in here, if you scroll down a ways, I have Antarctica pick me up.
That's neat.
One of the stations down there that's always listening picked me up earlier. So that's 9,000 miles. And then the furthest contact that I have on this one on the Whisper Net page was 10,500 miles, I think.
Okay.
And that was to a VK station, and that is Australia.
Nice. So, two quick things. Chicken Hawk says that you're making ham radio cool again, Nate.
Yeah.
And I said that to me that would make a good patch. We could design it like Make America Great Again, but it would be making ham radio great again or cool again. And Sunnyland wants to know, what do you think? Can we do it?
Sunnyland, where exactly are you?
In Illinois somewhere.
Yeah, in Illinois. Give me a county.
We're gonna try. Yeah, so Sunnyland is asking Nate if you want to try a live contact on here. I've been hearing Chicago and Rockford a lot today, so you never know what can happen on live stream. So do you want to keep that screen up, or do you want me to bring us back up?
You can close that one out. I'll get another one going here.
Sunnyland is from Peoria.
Peoria. I don't know if we could do 5.2. We might be able to do 80. That might be a haul. Let me get this set up real quick and then.
Sure. He says 40 meter.
40? Yeah, we can try it.
Sure. Well, you go ahead and set things up and I can, let's see what we got going on here. We'll go back up through the comments.
I'm going to close out Grid Tracker and WSJTX and bring
This is the only antenna he has. So try it. Okay. It can't hurt to try it. We've never tried anything quite like this before, have we? So this will be fun.
All right. So let's new setup here.
Yeah. And he's asking you to call the frequency there. So
why can't you listen to that? SDR device. Sorry, I have like 3 computers. Tim, you saw this, how it was set up earlier.
Okay, I will say, while you guys are while you're doing that, I'll mention it was kind of cool. The last 2 days, I've had two different people send pictures of them watching the workshop podcast on big screen TV. So I thought that was pretty cool. So Dan sent a picture the other night of his Christmas tree with the podcast in the background, and then Chicken Hawk, who is in here right now, and also you guys should know, follow Chicken Hawk on. Let me see if I can bring him up. But so Chicken Hawk sent a picture the other night where he was sitting down, chilling out, watching the workshop podcast on the big screen as well. So I never think to do that. I mean, I do watch the occasional YouTube, but I don't think about watching live things on there.
Let me see if this will work now, because I had
Sure.
to change all. No, it can't. All right. Well, apparently my other thing's not going to work. I have HDSDR. And I had it working earlier, but it's not going to work now.
Oh, and Aaron just got it on upstairs right now on the TV. So
yeah,
I'll have to, I think we're going to, Aaron also says making history in Tim's workshop. Absolutely.
All right.
So there is Chicken Hawk's YouTube channel, guys. You guys make sure you give him a follow too.
Where did he say? I saw a frequency just roll by.
Oh, 7.230.
7.230. All right, let me get this set up here.
Oh, we can hear too. I didn't know if we'd be able to get audio. That will be cool.
Yeah, give me a second.
At Christmas time.
So I'm on a 7610. So 7.230.
Nate's gonna make this look slick. So whenever we
All right. Can you guys hear that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Sunnyland, K8ROI. My call sign is November Alpha 9 Tango Echo. Is this frequency in use? Is this frequency in use? November Alpha 9 Tango Echo. Is this frequency in use? Is this frequency in use? November Alpha 9 Tango Echo.
you're checking to see if it's available.
Yeah. I want to make sure nobody's gonna. I'm not blocking anybody. Give me just a second here. I want to make sure. Give me a second. I saw his comment. I want to make sure I'm on the right frequency.
Oh, sorry. I will bring you back. What do you need me to pin there?
Nope, I got it. I see it.
Okay.
Kilo 8, Romeo, Oscar, Yankee, November, Alpha 9, Tango, Echo. Kilo 8, Romeo, Oscar, Yankee, November, Alpha 9, Tango, Echo. Not hearing anything.
No. That's okay.
Yep, not hearing anything.
So does that, you would get something pretty quick if you were?
If he hears me, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. So that shows. Now, if you wanted to make contact with him right now and he had multiple antennas at all the different meters or a band, sorry. So let's use this as kind of a teaching or a talking point. So if like we always bring it back to the Going Home book series, because in there they make it sound so damn easy, because he's like, here, you know, every night he contacts Buddy to talk to his wife and whatever. So if you wanted to contact Sunnyland Camper right now, what would be your next step if you had any option you could use?
My next step would be go to 80.
Okay.
With an NVIS antenna, I think it would be a little bit better. Or maybe try and hit the repeater that's about halfway between here and him.
Okay.
That
using
would be
what?
2 meter, 70 centimeter would be my guess.
Okay. So how far as the crow flies are you from him right now, roughly?
Roughly, I'd say 2 hours, I think 3 hours to Peoria.
Okay.
So it would be a stretch for 2 meters.
So,
and honestly, he's probably, if we had done this during the day, 40 meters would have been a little bit better. But being
so the things you need to know is and this would come through experience, right? You would know what the best time of day to contact somebody within a certain distance would be.
Right. Yep.
Because the difference between ham and cell phone is if you want to contact somebody on ham, you've got to base that around, the solar cycle, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas cell phone, you just pick it up. So you have to have a plan, and you have to have practice and a plan in place, I suppose.
Right. Absolutely. I see it's commented on 2 meter high SWR. Yeah, you don't want to risk a radio.
Will that blow it out? Or
high SWR standing wave ratio, if it's real high, it's more power reflected back on the radio.
Okay.
He is right. It does take experience, and it does take playing around. I find that my vertical antenna transmits on a shorter distance, but is also deaf as a post.
Really? So it can transmit well, but it doesn't hear very well?
Yeah, and I think that has to do with the power lines.
Okay.
It's kind of it's within 100 feet of power lines, and I think I have to either A, put a filter on the radio, or B, do a little bit better grounding system for it.
So that's a good example of why a person would never say, well, I'm going to buy a bunch of ham radio stuff, and then if the shit hits the fan, I'll just play with it.
Yeah, where are you going to find the ham radio operators?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you learn taking these tests, and there's a lot of stuff you learn playing with the radios.
Right.
And if you try and build your own antenna, or you buy the wrong antenna for the wrong band, or your antenna requires you to adjust it for every single band. Like I have one that is multi-banded. It does 4 bands. It's the Wolf River coil. And that thing, you need an antenna tuner anytime you hook it up to the radio.
Right.
Or not a tuner, a vector network analyzer.
Okay.
So it's basically it analyzes the antenna and tells you where it's resonant. And if you don't have that in the right spot and you key your radio up with 100 watts, poof goes your radio.
Wow. John Pugliano at Nicole's LFTN, Living Free in Tennessee, He had a really cool mobile HF station that he was playing with.
I have that exact same setup.
Okay. It was cool because it was really neat. I could see the physical... What are they, windings? Is that what they call them?
Yeah, it's a Wolf River coil. I can get it out of my desk here. Give me a second.
Sure.
I'll get both the antennas.
Yeah, so I'll explain while he's going. But yeah, so John, if you guys don't know him, he runs the Weltsteading podcast. So he was there. He also pulls behind this tiny little teardrop camper that's big enough for one person. And he's a ham dude. And he had this little mobile antenna. I don't remember how tall it was, but it had coils around it, which would allow it to access all the different... depending on, I guess, if they were energized. I can't remember if that's what it was called, but he would you could tune it in at any frequency you wanted, and it was rather cool. There you go. Yeah. And what is that called? The coils on it, Nate?
So this is the collar. It slides up and down.
Right.
And this depends on where you want to put it. So right now it's kind of set in the 20 area, 20 meters, and you can spin this collar around to fine tune it to the frequency that you're on. And that's how you get a resonant. So if you're off a little bit, A, you're not going to be able to transmit as well. And B, you're not going to be able to listen as well.
You're going to have more static?
Yeah, you're going to have more static, and you're just not going to be receiving the full signal.
Okay.
So this is my vertical. It's got a 9-foot tall whip that sits on up here. And then it's got a tripod stand that's on the bottom.
Okay.
And then that's where the coax gets plugged in. And it just sits, right on the floor like that.
What's one of those worth?
$150.
Would that be any good to me who has a few, I'm on the prairies, but in my town, I'm in a bit of a depression area. And then I got a bunch of trees around me and that sort of thing. Could I still transmit out from something like that?
Yeah, you can transmit.
Okay.
If I were you, I would do something like this.
Okay. And then
So
hang it up through a tree or?
This is that end fed I was talking about.
Yep. Looks like
So
fishing
this
line,
is,
right?
yeah. So it's literally, it all spools out like that. And
Okay.
it's a half wavelength of 40 meters all rolled up in this thing.
And if a fellow wanted to get started, that's all you need, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, it took me an hour to build this thing, and the housing's 3D printed.
Oh, you built that?
Yeah, I built this from scratch the morning of field day,
Okay.
and I made all of our contacts on 15 meters with this antenna.
And you said that that's your best antenna or one of your best?
Yeah, this is one of my best antennas.
And what do you use for wire?
It's 26 gauge, real small.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like speaker wire. That looks like thermostat wire almost.
Pretty much. It's 26 gauge, high strength Kevlar, and solid steel. So it's solid copper wire with a Kevlar outer core.
What did it cost you to make that to buy the wire and everything for that?
I think I want to say it was maybe $50.
And how does the coax connect to that? Did you have to?
The coax comes in right there.
So did you have to solder anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything inside of this thing is soldered up.
Okay.
We built this thing Sunday morning field day at 6 a.m. and I was up on the air at 7 a.m. with it, and I made 45 contacts on 15.
And it needs how much height do you need for something like that? Or
30
do you?
feet. 30 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, you just need the peak up at 30 feet, and then you can have the box down on the bottom. But I mean,
And that's a half wavelength of 40 meters?
half wavelength of 40 meters.
That's 20 meters, so 60 feet. So,
right.
So you're up 30 feet, and then you're going to come out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's my hand.
Okay.
And it's literally the size of a hockey puck.
And you got a carabiner on the end to clip it to something?
Yep.
Wow.
And then you tie a wire down to this end and stake it into the ground, and you're good to go.
So that just grounds it?
Well, it hangs up off the ground, so it'll sit like this much up off the ground.
Okay.
And then you tie this one with like some paracord,
Yep.
and then stake it in, and then you have just the wire, like a piece of paracord on a throw rope over a branch, or you could even run this thing over a branch.
Okay.
And that's your setup. So I have a 50-pound test fishing line that I use for my pole wire. I got a wrench tied to it that I just whip over a tree and pull it up with.
Huh. Well, that's one thing I love about the whole ham thing is the do-it-yourself mindset, and they're willing to spend hours to build a cheap antenna that works for you, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, here's reality. You're going to spend a ton of money on the gear.
Right.
You can go spend $3,000 to $12,000 on a radio.
Right.
Okay. If your antenna is crap and you didn't build your antenna right, you're not going to hear anything, and it's going to be useless. A good antenna on a cheap radio is better than a good radio with a cheap antenna.
That's good. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why you tune into the workshop podcast. Yeah, because that's worth the price of admission right there.
Right. I mean, the radio that I have, it's a IC 7610. It's an expensive radio. Don't get me wrong there, but I have a really good long wire antenna, and I am experimenting with a vertical, and I need to get that vertical where I want it. It's close. Like, I can make contacts on it, but I have a real hard time hearing.
Can you buy one that's like your homemade one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the one that I have up, the NFED that I have up is bought. It's an Chameleon and MCOM Base 3 80 meter half wave antenna.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's going to be twice as long.
It's 130 feet.
Okay.
And that peak is up at about 50 feet.
Okay. Now, you don't have to have that. So because, my land, for instance, is fairly narrow but quite long. So could I come out a ways and then go at a 90-degree angle and then run along my fence line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So the way I used to have mine, I had it off the garage up to about 30 feet,
Okay.
back down to about 10 feet, and then making a dog leg along my fence line for another 50 feet to take up the rest.
Okay. And it just basically needs to be off the ground. Is that the idea?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It was that side was 10 feet up off the ground between two pieces of conduit.
And it can't be coiled up either, right? It has to be stretched out.
Yeah, because if it's coiled up, that's when you lose the length. So as soon as you fold over a wire or lengthen it up, the signal stops there.
Right, because then all of a sudden you're at a smaller band. Yeah.
Shorter length, yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to show on your computer, or was that it?
Unfortunately, HDSDR is not working. That's that program that I use on my streams.
Okay.
New laptop. I had it working earlier. I'm sure if I shut this thing down and got it all figured out, it would start working. But
you know what? It'll give us an excuse to bring you back in the new year.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. I'd like that a lot, actually.
So I can try and turn this thing on one more time just in case.
Sure. If anyone else has any questions for Nate out there, throw them up, because if not, we'll probably wind her down here, pardon the pun, in just a few minutes, I'm imagining.
Yep.
We've got, it is snowed for 3 days in
There
a
we
row
go.
here. So is it working?
Yep, I got it working.
You want me to bring up the screen share?
Yeah, if you just want to bring up the screen, there's no audio with it. Well, I can probably turn the audio up.
That's okay. Yeah, go do what you want, man. Oh, I like that. That looks like, I don't know, something out of the Matrix, for instance.
So this is HDSDR. What you're seeing, so the 40 meter band, let me move this over a little bit. Wrong one. I gotta go up here.
So we're seeing, I don't know, like graphical representations, almost like a straight rainbow or of different colors. So what is this? What does this represent, Nate?
So all your peaks that you're seeing on here are signals.
Okay.
Right now, I could bring this.
So is this showing people, like if somebody logged in here, this would tell you which bands are working right now or which ones are active?
Yes, this would tell you where you're actually hearing people. So if I were to switch this and go to 40 meters.
Okay.
So you see how that frequency changes.
Yeah.
Now you're in the 14. You don't see any signals.
So it's dead right now?
Yeah, you don't see anybody talking there.
So is that part of the reason why we didn't get a contact on 40?
No, this is 20 meters.
Oh, 20. Okay.
Right. So 40, there is 40 meters.
Okay. Oh,
so
yeah.
You see all those peaks popping up. Those are voice signals.
That's
so
cool.
If I have this right, if that top, which is not tracking. Oh, yeah, it is.
So does that represent a whole bunch of conversations all across the 40 meter band right now?
Yes.
And what do you call, is it a whole bunch of channels within a band? Is that what you call each one?
Frequencies.
Frequencies. So how many usable frequencies would be on, say, the 40 meter band roughly?
Every 3 kilohertz.
Okay. And how many?
So your voice for 40 meters, it goes from 7.125 to 7.300. So that gives you 175 kilohertz.
Okay, so you're looking at
divided by 3.
So around 55. So there's 55 usable frequencies roughly in there.
Roughly, yeah. Yep.
And each one would be about, each band would be roughly the same?
No. So 80 meters goes from 3.6 to 4.0.
Okay.
So that's 20. Your 10 meters goes from 28.3 to 29.7.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
And then your real small one is 17 meters, is 18.11 to 18.168.
So are there certain times of the day where you might have a challenge to even get on an open frequency within a band, or is it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
40 meters is usually pretty busy at night, especially when you have a contest.
Okay.
Field day, it's every third or fourth weekend in June or July. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
We do it every year. I just don't remember exactly when it is. that is, you will have a very hard time finding an open frequency, and usually you are stepping on somebody trying
Okay.
to make a contact.
And is the reason that you have 3 kilohertz between each frequency, is that so that you can dial up or down a little bit to dial in, or is it just
Well,
so you don't read over?
your signal, when you transmit, your signal is 2.8 kilohertz wide
Oh, okay.
on single sideband.
Okay.
So they give you 3 kilohertz to play with, so you have that little extra, so you're not taking up the guy next to you.
That makes sense.
So the big signal, you see that's all the way over to the right. That's got the one peak in the center with the 2 peaks coming up.
Yep.
It's over by 7.220, somewhere in that range. That's an AM broadcast station.
Oh, so AM can broadcast within some of the ham bands?
That is the European AM broadcast.
Okay.
That starts at 7.2 and goes up.
So that's something you're going to pick up on shortwave then, is it?
Yes, that is all shortwave. And then
we should do a show on shortwave sometime, Nate.
Yep. And then pirate broadcasting is generally around 6.9.
So that's still a thing?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I bet we could probably even find something on here, to be honest.
So what do they do on pirate radio now? Because that was always a thing I remember the 80s and 70s from what I've heard. And
yeah, let's see if it's picking anything up. Yeah, it's probably at 6940. I'm not going to play it long, but
I'm just going to shout out to my buddy Ed Shaw. He listens to this sometimes if he happens to. He's a former radio guy who cut his teeth on pirate radio. I want to say in the 80s at college. He always used to talk about it. So.
Yeah. So this is probably going to be upper sideband, I would guess.
Okay. And do they play music on there, or is it more talk?
It's probably more music. Well, that might not be something. That's something else.
Okay.
But that is like right around one of the pirate stations.
That's cool. And how many watts would they be broadcasting with?
A couple thousand, probably.
And that's totally illegal, right?
Oh yeah, totally illegal.
But okay.
So, yeah, I'm turning it down for it's not working well with me, so
that's okay. Bring us back up there.
But I will sit around and answer any questions anybody has.
So if anybody else has any questions you want to throw up for Nate, throw them up there and we'll answer them.
Yeah.
And while they're throwing up questions, Nate, how do people find you? Where do they go? I mean, obviously they can find you right here, right now, but if they want to follow up with you.
Well, you can find us in the Workshop Podcast Telegram. We're usually in there. And then you can find us at twochickshomestead.com.
Nice.
That is our website for our podcast. We do, like I said earlier, a weekly podcast, and we cover the gamut, everything from homeschooling to ham radio to breaking shit to fixing shit to butchering animals to failing at stuff and succeeding at some stuff and just life in general. So,
and you guys have a Telegram group?
Yep, we have a Telegram group. It's you're gonna make me look that up.
That's all right. I can share it if you want. It's Two Chicks something or other here. I think I can.
Yeah, it's
we can
t.me Two Chicks Homestead Podcast.
There you go. Yep. I'll 1 second.
Because we were able to finally get that correct one.
Yes, that's tricky. So, and have you been doing any? I know for a while you were doing some live streams like this, but a little more in depth. I know Christmas, everything gets hairy this time of year. So
I was doing it Friday night, and I would sign into my net and check into that and kind of listen to that. Well, 3 weeks straight in a row, I couldn't hear the net. So really? I'm like, well,
what happened?
It's propagation.
Oh, okay.
So it's hit or miss. You're not always going to hear the same people over and over.
That makes sense.
That's kind of one of the nice things I like about ham radio. It's never the same people every day.
So if
you're always making new contacts is the idea, right?
Correct. Yep. And then you can go out and do parks on the air and make even more contacts, but that's
Now
a totally different episode.
Okay. I think we could do a bunch of them, right? So
Oh yeah. I mean, this is a can of worms, and it can get deep quick. So,
which is cool, because here's the other thing. I've heard a lot of people talk about ham radio and make it sound god awful boring.
mm-hmm.
But I will tell you one thing that you never do, Nate, is make anything boring when you talk about it, because you can tell that somebody is passionate about something, number one,
mm-hmm.
right? But yeah. I appreciate that, because this is something that, when it's positioned the right way and when it's taught the right way, makes people interested in it, instead of, because you do get the old fellers that I call them, the ham evangelists, that are like, hey, let me share the gospel of ham radio with you. And you're like, could you just shut the hell up? I don't want to hear it.
I can't stand those guys. I don't want to gatekeep.
No, right.
I mean, it's the more people we have on ham radio and the more people using it, the more we're going to keep.
Well, what's the best way to if you meet somebody that's not interested in guns or not interested in shooting, what's the best way to get them interested? Take them to the damn gun range, right?
Yeah.
So what's the best way to get somebody in ham radio? It certainly isn't to sit there and talk about it. It's to let them experience it themselves, right?
Yeah. Either show up at or find your local club and show up at either summer field day or winter field day.
Okay.
If they're running either one of those, show up, get on the radio, and try it out. Or you can go, all right, so radioreference.com. You can click that gives you a lot of frequencies for police and fire stuff, but it also gives you your amateur radio stuff. So you can find all your repeaters and stuff in the area. And it will also give you, if you look at your zip code, you can look at the hams in town.
Right. So you could contact people.
Right. I would tell this to anybody. Look me up and shoot me an email. Okay. Take that. I think you can find a call sign, or if you get a call sign, find an email off of that and be able to send it. Or you look on QRZ.com at that call sign. So it's www.qrz.com. Look up the call sign in your town, and it should give you like an email. You might have to log in and get the person's email, but shoot somebody an email, no matter what, and talk to them, ask them. As Aaron said, I had this 16-year-old kid show up at the house one day looking for technician books. We were down here for 3 hours talking about radio, and he was asking about all the gear. So
that's like, did you guys watch Stranger Things at all on Netflix?
Aaron does. I don't.
Yeah, and in there there was I think he was a science teacher or math teacher that had a ham radio club,
mm-hmm.
and the boys in there, at least the one that's missing the teeth, I can't think of his name, very interested. And ham and radio in general played a big part in a couple of those seasons.
Yep.
So it's neat. I was walking through Walmart the other night, and they had an old Everready or Energizer. It was one of those vintage flashlights. You remember the old silver ones? They had the rings around them. And it was branded with Stranger Things, because whatever they put anything on that show, in the the teenagers or kids in general, I sound like an old man, but the kids get interested in it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, if anybody ever has any questions and you want to talk ham radio, I'll give Tim my email, and you guys can shoot him an email and have him get a hold of me, and I will get you pointed in the right direction.
That would be awesome, because
I want people to do this. I want people to have fun. So,
and there's one thing that most hams are you can almost agree on, is the fact that all you want is to encourage most. There are the few old men yelling at cloud gatekeepers who say, oh no, but what are you going to do at some point? You're going to be gone, and the hobby will die if you don't get young people interested, right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, generally, when you get licensed, the first thing out of somebody's mouth, another ham radio operator's mouth, is when are you upgrading?
That's funny. Yeah.
That's the way it is. The first question, I passed my technician, I got on the radio. The guy who is the VEC for our club, the volunteer exam coordinator for our club, like 30 seconds into me jumping on the repeater, when you get your general? When you get your general? And then he signed the paperwork for my extra or my general, and then he's like, when you doing your extra?
Chicken Hawk says, see, it's a cult. That's probably why a lot of the Mormons are into it, right? So,
and it's Erin will tell you she passed her test. And the first thing I asked her is, all right, I'm going to be the one to do it. When are you upgrading to your general?
Well, every time you and I talk, it's always, I always bring it up before you ask. But
what the hell, Tim? When are you upgrading?
I know. Right? So it's true. It's nothing. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean it's a skill you're never going to lose.
Right.
And it's something fun to play with. And if you like spending money, it's definitely a hobby to get into. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole and spend a ton of money. If you like camping, get into POTA, Parks on the Air. Go visit your state parks. Bring your radio with. Set up. Make contacts. It's like Pokemon Go for radio.
But not that, we won't go down this rabbit hole tonight. Maybe this is one we could do sometime. But it's absolutely can be done on the cheap as well, can it? If you wanted to build some little radio yourself. And
HF, if you want to get into HF communications, you want to get your general. I would say at minimum, you're looking at $1,000.
Okay.
And that is to buy a 100-watt radio. You don't want to buy anything less than 100-watt for your first radio, because if you don't know what you're doing, you are going to get frustrated with a radio that's only capable of 5 to 20 watts. There's one out there. It's a Zygu G90. A lot of people love that radio.
Okay.
It's $450. It's got 200 or 20 watts on it. And you got to have a solid antenna. Now it has a tuner in it that can tune up a wet noodle and transmit on it. I have a Yaesu FT891 that's a 100-watt radio, and I have a resonant antenna, and I talked to a guy up pretty much in the North Pole, Northwest Territories, from a park 10 miles down the road.
So you were mobile.
I was portable, set up in a park on a battery with my vertical antenna, and I talked to a guy up in Northwest Territories.
That's crazy. Yeah, so it's doable.
Yeah, and the same day I talked to a guy in Spain from the same park, not 5 minutes later.
So a good combination is 100 watts and a decent antenna then.
100 watts and a decent antenna. Do what you can. You can always turn the power down, but start off with 100 watts.
That's yeah. That's like when I say, nobody ever said, man, I should have built a smaller garage, right?
Right, absolutely. Because, I mean, you can go out and buy this $20 radio, this $450 radio that's only got 20 watts, and you're going to go spend another $500 to put a 100-watt amp behind it.
Ah, right.
So you're already over the price of the Yaesu. The Yaesus are $650. Sometimes you can find them used for $500.
One thing I've noticed is hams always love to have extra radios. Mm-hmm. So if you talk to your local ham guys, there's a lot of times, especially if you're new, they're going to throw you a killer deal just to get you into the hobby.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an IC821 here. It's a 2 meter, 70 centimeter satellite rig. So this is like the high end 2 meter, 70 centimeter rig that would have sold from ICOM, say 20 years ago.
Okay.
It was well over brand new $1,500. If I were to replace it with a new radio, it would be $1,800.
Right, isn't it? Yeah.
I paid $375 for it from one of my club members.
And I'll bet dollars to donuts at some point down the road, you'll return the favor to somebody else,
Absolutely. I mean, if I sell it for what I have into it, now granted, I just sent it out for repair, another $250 repair to have some stuff worked on.
Sure.
But the going rate on these radios, they don't lose value.
You're right. And some of the older ones actually appreciate in value, don't they?
Oh yeah, there's a Kenwood D74. So this is a HT. It does full duplex. So that is, as you are talking on one frequency, you can hear yourself on the other frequency.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it works really good with satellite communications. So when you talk on a satellite, you talk in on 2 meters and you listen on 70 centimeters.
Oh, okay.
It goes through the repeater like that. That's how they do it. It does full duplex. That radio, brand new. It's a handheld, sold for $350.
Okay.
It was discontinued 6 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe. It is now $900 on eBay.
Isn't that crazy?
Good luck finding one.
Right.
So, I mean, that's reality. Kenwood D74. I would love that handheld to play with radios because it is the only full duplex HT out there.
Huh. But again, supply and demand, right?
Absolutely. So,
well, brother Nate, we've hit 2 hours. That's usually I rarely go 2 hours, but as far as we got Jessica and Joseph on here. Good to have you. But yeah, one more time. What's your website?
twochickshomestead.com.
Perfect.
Is our main site, or you can find our itty bitty tip link at twochicks.ittybitty.tips.
That's
the easy.
TIP
Yes.
as in Papa, S as in Sierra.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, we will, if you're up for it, Nate, I think we're going to have to do another, what was this, 2? We've done 2 now.
Yep.
I think we'll have to do at least a dozen more if you're up for it.
Absolutely. I'll do it whenever. I mean, this is fun stuff. And if one person in the comment goes out and gets licensed over this, all for it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, sir. We'll, I think we'll end her here, guys. So thank you very much. We've got, so the next live show, I think we're going to do a Thursday and a Friday show this week, and then a quick little Christmas break. So guys, as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.